I think if you want to know more about the Nigerian government lobbying the US government and how the lobbying move will hit a block, when I mean it will hit a block, it's not going to go anywhere, it's not going to have any effect. Mr. Kunde is a national security and defense scholar. He was on Arise News. That was yesterday evening. So he explained a lot of things about the Nigerian government trying to lobby the US. And this was what I was trying to tell people. I said, okay, United States have an interest in Nigeria. And the interest US have in Nigeria is not just about the issue of Christian genocide alone. I think that they are just using that one to front it. The US have an interest in Nigeria. And the interest is that there is a plan to turn Nigeria into a terror stronghold. And it's a threat to US. It's a very big threat to US. And US don't play with all this Islamic terrorism, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all these people that are in Nigeria. So US have the interest that, no, we will stop this. Whether you like it or not, that is their interest. And coupled with all this issue of Christian genocide and so on and so forth. So US have their interest, they have their policy about this. They are not backing down on it. And not only US, okay? Get that fact clearly. So this man you're about to watch his video was explaining something that I've been telling people. We have over 4.2 and above million people in IDP camp in Nigeria. And one of the 7 states that these IDPs are dominated is Benue State. A US rep member came to Nigeria and visited one of the IDP camp where he saw over 600,000 Christians in that IDP camp. Now, Tinubu did not make a swift movement to now make homes safe for these people in the IDP camp, to return to their ancestral homes, build schools for them, revive their life. They did not do all those things. So, okay, $9 million is enough to do all those things. They abandoned those people. The lives of the people in IDP camp doesn't matter. You understand? What matters is this. Let us go and lobby to change the narrative. Pay attention and watch this video to understand the narratives and the danger of pseudo-intellectualism in Nigeria. Take a listen.
Really, lobbying is not a bad idea in terms of engaging stakeholders. However, when you put it in perspective, we are dealing with a situation that when you do lobby, you want to provide additional data which may help to corroborate, validate, verify, or otherwise determine. In this case, where you're talking about the US government relating with the Nigerian state, the first question you need to ask is, how do you understand the access and capacity of the United States to gather information and data to process, to reinforce their own foreign policy regarding your country? If there was no poverty of intellectualism and rigors of analytic capacity on this part of the Nigerian state, it would have been open to us that the United States government already has multiple sources of gathering data concerning the Nigerian state. There is the United States government, federal government of Nigeria relations at the diplomatic, the military, and through a series of overseas development assistance programs, which allows them to access official data and to interact with state actors within the Nigerian space, which automatically means that in terms of their joint security working group, in terms of all the dynamics of training, intelligence gathering, and sharing, they have this. But unfortunately, what we are now saying to ourselves, and we have just done, is that we are saying that you want to provide somebody who already has more information and data about Nigeria than you yourself, in some cases, mindful of the fact that the US government, through multilateral platforms, do give support to NGOs, even to government. A number of initiatives in the Office of the National Security Advisor that has been identified as the sponsor of this lobby procurement. They have US AID, US government initiatives supporting them, and they already get data. It therefore means that it is wrong, and that was why initially some of us were pleading with Messrs. Daniel Buhala, and the others to kindly tone down their rhetoric of the noise they were making, because the folks that were talking from the United States aren't enough data. Mind you, you equally have the diaspora component resident in the United States, and you have the information sharing between US government and EU countries that fall into NATO, and you have the media access. And one of the few things that we must never forget is that a number of data that are used by international and foreign missions all over the world are open source, and they are media-based. And you have the conventional media, the traditional media like Arise, that they can easily monitor and collate data from. And then you have the social media platforms. And when you are talking about the social media platforms, you'll be talking in terms of Facebook, WhatsApp, you'll be talking in terms of Snapchat, Instagram, and the like. It should interest us to note that X, that formerly was Twitter, we have 7.5 million Nigerians that are subscribed to X, and we have 48.7 million Nigerians on Facebook. On Instagram, we already have 9.9 to 12.6 million. TikTok, we have 37.4 million. On WhatsApp, we have 51 million penetration in terms of subscription, and we have Snapchat, YouTube, and all others. Now, if the US government that we know and the way they take serious information, media monitoring, gathering, and data analysis, we are already aware that they will have more than enough information. So when you are now pushing a lobby project, it means that you must be mindful that whatsoever you are going to be presenting to them will not really affect their decision making. The foreign policy framework of the United States is already cast in such a way that such lobby will not really make any significant input.
Well, it's interesting you make that point, because several people have been drawing parallels between this instance and what we saw happening in South Africa, for example, with a group called AfriForum that was accused of doing a very similar thing that this particular Biafra agitation group is said to have done. However, in the South African case, the data available negated all of these accusations or allegations, if I may call them that. In the Nigerian instance, there are those who are saying that, well, the Nigerian government has had to toe this line because there is a sense of an admission of guilt. What do you think? Do you think that towing this line is an admission of guilt or complicity in some of the issues happening? Because we've seen several governments just stand up to the United States and say, we say no, this is not what's happening, and not use taxpayers' money to try and placate them or, bargain with them. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much, Vimbai, for helping to situate it correctly. What you're asking us to discuss now is the opportunity cost of deploying 750,000 US dollars, which is equivalent of about 1.125 billion naira every month, just for advocacy. Whereas, in terms of development, if you are to look at the spectrum of the Sustainable Development Goals, you will discover there are a lot that we can do and achieve deploying that resource, particularly when you look at it from the angle of the internally displaced persons that do not have access to various amenities that will ensure that they have a standard livelihood and be properly catered for and allowed to live like human beings. When you look at the fact that this is more of a procurement thing, then you will discover that how come the disclosure instruments by the DCI group has indicated that the intermediary entity that handled this is one Asta Legal Services, situated in Choice Plaza, Alkali Road in Kaduna. Is that entity an SPV under the Security Defense Management Architecture of the Nigerian state? If so, what exactly went through the Office of the National Security Advisor in terms of the procurement procedures according to the laws of the Nigerian state? That is not clear, and I'm hoping that the appropriate committees of the National Assembly will do their oversight. Again, when you look at it from the angle of access to information, when you are deploying resources for a particular purpose and objective, when you take a look at it and compare and contrast this same with what had been in public domain before now, you need to ask yourself, how does this affect your integrity status? As it is now, indirectly, this is casting aspersion on the officials of the Nigerian state that came out forcefully and were very vociferous in stating that there wasn't nothing that can be related to what the accusation had indicated. And I want to believe that a certain Daniel Buhala, amongst others, will apologize to Nigerians. A Daniel Buhala will be gracious to apologize to my very good friend and brother on the table over there, Rufai, that they got this wrong and they were only grandstanding. And when you are grandstanding, you need to understand there is a limit. Now that we are now at this point that they are deploying resources for lobbying, it is clear that we need to now ask them the question, how much are you spending for the rehabilitation of the IDPs? How much are you deploying for the reconstruction and development of the Christian worship centers and other entities and things like that that were destroyed? How much compensation are we going to be paying to the victims of some of these atrocious murder, assassination, and the like that have taken place? Are we now going to be paying compensation to the families of the deceased? Are we going to provide resources for the Christian community to rebuild the churches, for the Muslim community to rebuild the mosques that have been destroyed? Those are the realities that we need to begin to discuss. So when you contrast it with what you are trying to bring up about the South African situation, where the information that went out was not necessarily a true reflection of reality. What we are dealing with in Nigeria, we have more than... Yes, sir.
And that's why I said, rather than lobbying yesterday, why don't we fix our problems? And I'll give you an instance. On the 3rd of January 2026, the story emerged around the 4th and the 5th of January. Another attack happened in Kwasan Daji markets. Several people were killed, about 37 to 42. But the interesting part is several others were abducted, numbers not known. But let me excite you even more. Some of the students from Papiri that were recently released were re-abducted. Till date, we have not seen any measure by the government to release them. But we are shelling out over $1 billion in lobbying. I want you to talk as regards priorities. Then secondly, why this company? Who approved or made the approval for them as regards the money? How was the money transferred? Who were the receiving group in America? Who are the contact person? Can the lobbying group give us a profile of how they are executing? Or these things are beyond the realms of state secrets?
Thank you very much, Rufai. In terms of procurement, it is clear that we have questions to ask. Ordinarily, if it was a stricto sensu security intelligence deployment expenditure under Regulation 1, we may not be allowed to ask questions. But the moment this is transcending from security into international relations, foreign relations, diplomacy, diplomatic practice, we are allowed to ask questions. I am open that the National Assembly, particularly the Senate Committee on Intelligence and the House Corollary on Intelligence, and then the Foreign Affairs Committees, are going to be gracious enough and responsible enough to do their due diligence of oversight to ask the questions. The identity of the interface entity on the Nigerian side is already known. The identity of the DCI group is known, and based on the right of disclosure clauses available in the United States government, there are some instruments already in public domain, one of which has identified that the authorizing person on the Nigerian side is a certain Malam Nuhu Ribadu, who is the incumbent national security advisor, which automatically means that to do a thorough investigation and inquest is so simple and straightforward. I am open that the Office of the National Security Advisor will be more than gracious to disclose what needs to be disclosed so that we can put some of these things to rest. And mind you, this is one of the reasons why either I've always held the position that the Office of National Security Advisor should strictly stay to the statutory constitutional role of advising. If they do, we will not be in such a mess like we are having now. Because ordinarily, if you had deployed a multivariate analytic framework of PESTEL, for example, which is at the primary level, you would have discovered that there was no need to go employ the services of any lobby group. Again, and I want to stress it, if the priorities of the Nigerian state under the incumbent administration was in tandem with sustainable development goals, there wouldn't have been any reason for them to deploy this kind of humongous resource, which is already in the excess of 13 billion naira. When you put 13 billion naira in perspective, what it will give to you is very, very meaningful.